Hey, how's it going? Today is Saturday. I know I'm late this week. It's episode 20. Holy smokes, 20 weeks episodes, crazy. So this week I want to talk about my kids. I love my kids. Before I had any children, before I met Sarah, I was traveling around the country. Well, I was traveling around a small area. I went to Hawaii. I came back from San Diego. I went to Hawaii. I came back from Hawaii. Went to Yellowstone. I didn't travel far or extensively, but I worked at the places I went to, and I met a lot of people. And after all of that time had passed, I felt like I was 24. I don't know. I just was, I guess, over anxious. And so it was a recipe for disaster. When Sarah and I met, it was like everything happened so fast, and I had there were red flags. I ignored them. There were people thought that I probably was moving too fast, and I was, obviously. And then we're pregnant with Sinclair, and I was so excited, so excited. And so at this point in my life, I was comfortable with everything that was going on. I liked my job. I made decent money. There was a path to us having a good life. It wasn't like we were super struggling. Sarah didn't have to work. There were a couple times when I took on a second job to make ends meet so that she could stay home. I felt like it was a good opportunity for for us to be comfortable. So now Sinclair's coming. We're super excited. We got married. That was nice. Sarah's family was welcoming. My family was welcoming to her. I'm sure she would tell you the same. So Sinclair comes, and she was such a beautiful baby. People would always say, "Oh my goodness, look at that baby. She's so beautiful." One of the funny things that people would say would be like, "She looks just like her dad." "Oh, she's so beautiful. She looks just like her dad." I think that Sarah didn't appreciate that. But Sinclair was super feminine. She was super pretty. She didn't have her first haircut until she was a few years old. So she had long, beautiful, thick black hair. And was always, my children, all three of them were always super witty. And really good babies. Sinclair and Richie and Ariana, not as much, but they would sleep through the night real early. They weren't super fussy, weren't super colicky, anything like that. The pregnancies were easy, the births were easy. I was really blessed. I remember Sinclair, when she was little, when she's starting pre-K and kindergarten, the first time going to a place with other children for a school type atmosphere. She had always gone to a faith-based. We were in church on top of them going, when they did go to daycare after the separation. It was faith-based. It was at the church off of, I want to say, Glendale and Central. But I remember Sinclair coming home the first day and saying, "Dad, they don't pray before they eat." I always thought that was super funny. Little Richie, when he came, he too was super witty. He was so rough and tumble as a little kid. There was a couple incidents with him that really stand out. There was a a day when I was super tired. I think Sarah was in bed already, and it just Richie and I were up, and I was watching something, and I put him to bed, and I was on the couch, I was nodding out, and I was like starting to fall asleep, and I was, trying to finish whatever I was watching, and I remember coming to and hearing little Richie's voice. He's a little kid. I think he was still in diapers. He's a little kid, and he comes out of his room and he says something, and I'm kind of snapping out of it, and then he walks back into his room, and then the third time I finally wake up and I realize what he's saying. What he's saying is, "That's bullshit, Dad. That's bullshit." And then I go back into his room all upset, probably because I made him go to bed or whatever. I remember Sinclair always wearing makeup. She could put on her lipstick perfectly at age 3. It was pretty funny. Sarah was always putting her in makeup. There was an incident where I picked them up from school, and Sinclair at 3 or 4 years old is in full makeup. Maybe she was 5 because little Richie was 3 or 4. And Sinclair's in full makeup, and I picked them up from school, and I'm just upset. I'm super upset. And Sinclair says, we're talking about, your mom thinks that you're a teenager. And then all of a sudden out of nowhere, little Richie says, "My mom thinks I'm a boy." And I'm like, wait, what? He's like, "My mom thinks I'm a boy." And I kind of reluctantly was like, "Whoa, what are you?" He's like, "I'm a man." And then Ariana too. Ariana's super witty. I got custody of Ariana when she was a year and a half. The first few months after she was born, I didn't have access to her. There was, her mom and I had broken up, and we had, after she was born, I took a paternity test, and she came out that she was mine, and we got back together briefly, and then when we broke up after that time, she, her and her family basically, she fell off the face of the earth for months and months, and then when she came back, maybe she was younger than a year and a half. She wasn't that old, but anyways, so I had got custody of Ariana really early, and she also was very, very feminine, very girly, super girly, always wanted to wear all the girls' boots and makeup, and anything that was shiny she wanted to wear it. There was a incident where she had taken one of her little snap-on earrings, and she's in the corner, and she's bent over, and she's crying, and she's all bent over, and she's like frustrated, crying, and I'm like, "What is going on over there?" I'm like, "Are you okay?" And I'm trying to figure out what she's doing. She was trying to get her little press-on earring under her belly button. There was an incident with her where my mom was babysitting her while I was at work, and she had her at Auntie Shelly's house, and she told Auntie Shelly, she was little too, she was 3, 4 years old, she told Auntie Shelly, "Why don't you dye your hair and put some lipstick on so you can find a man," or something like that. It was absolutely hilarious. My kids, all 3 of them, were always super witty, super smart. Sinclair, was off the chart when it came to school, and she was always honor roll, always AP classes. I mean, just off the chart smart. Richie and Ariana, they struggled in school a little bit, so as did I, but I didn't struggle because I didn't know the stuff. I struggled because I didn't do the work. I would never do homework. It wasn't until the last year of school that I actually buckled down and did homework and did the stuff I was supposed to do. And that was only because I had to, because the football coach made everybody that was at risk of not being able to play take this study hall class in the morning. And so I would go there and do my homework from the day before that was going to get turned in that day before school, and all of a sudden I had good grades. And I think that probably is a lot of the reason why Richie struggled when he got a little older, and then Ariana too, for that matter, because too busy socializing and whatnot. But yeah, I was very, very blessed. I know that there was a lot of stuff that happened with between Sarah and I, between Kathleen and I, that affected Ariana, the Kathleen and I stuff, and Sinclair and Richie with the Sarah and I stuff. I found myself in court a lot. I found myself in situations where I was struggling to make ends meet, and then had the kids 5 days a week, and then was still forced to pay Sarah child support. And my thought at the time was, I was glad to pay the money to have the kids at home. If I could have the kids at home full time and had to pay money to do it, then I was okay with that. But I mean, looking back in retrospect, there was a lot of things that the kids didn't get to do that I would like to have had them do. But they're good kids. They've always been good kids. They've always had good heads on their shoulders. Like I said, I was super blessed. All three of them. Ariana's getting older now. She's going to be an adult, in like a little over a year, and I feel like she's grown a ton in a short period of time. Her whole demeanor in the last year has changed. She's like a little young adult now, whereas she's always been a child and an immature 15-year-old. And now I feel like in this just recently I started noticing it, that her demeanor has completely changed, which is refreshing, because we had some rough years there. Yeah, parenting is it's an odd thing, and I know people that and I've known people that have families that they never talk to each other, they never see each other, and I met a guy who him and his son had a huge falling out over something really crazy. That was actually a crazy story. The guy was an electrician, and him and I worked together on a project side by side when I was early in the trade. And he was super smart, really smart guy, really quiet, really focused on what he was doing. And I learned a ton about bending pipe. At that time, I was early in the trade, and working side by side with somebody like that for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. You get to know them. You chit chat, talk about work and home life. And one day, he just opened up to me about, because I would ask, do you have kids? Are you married? Whatnot. He gave me kind of a brief overview, and then finally one day he was telling me that his wife and his son and another family member were going to travel across state line, to another state. They were gonna road trip someplace for some reason. He wasn't going because of work or whatever, and the son was gonna drive. The son did drive, and that they had driven cross country, and apparently, for whatever reason, that they got into an accident, and the mom passed away. And it was a huge thing in the family, and everybody was super upset. And apparently, what he told me was that, after the mom had passed, everybody kind of, went their own ways. His remaining children and him, and he wasn't she wasn't on the trip. He wasn't involved, but some of the family came to him and told him that the son was saying. They're starting to tell people, this is like a couple of years later, that the reason why the accident happened was because the dad neglected to, check the tire pressure and put, do the maintenance on the car needed, and that was the issue. But originally they thought that the boy had fallen asleep, and he was trying to change the narrative to it was the dad's fault. And the dad was like, I guess he loved his wife a lot, was so angry that this kid would try to put the blame on him that he freaked out, and I guess it got real bad between him and his son. I don't know. I feel like I need to spend more time with my family. I'm at the point now, the way everything's going. I'm glad that Sinclair is back in Phoenix, or the greater Phoenix area. But it's really been weighing on me. Now I'm working a ton of hours again, so it's going to make it more difficult. But I don't see Sebastian nearly as much as I would like, and that's not anybody's fault. They're busy, I'm busy. I try to call the kids, at least once a week, but we're all in the same town, so I got to make a better effort to try to see them. And then also my dad too. I talk to my mom a couple times a month, but I only talk to my dad maybe once a month or once every other month, and then I got to make a better effort, especially because it's like a mile and a half from my house. So I guess the point of all this is, a lot of people don't have their parents anymore, and I'm sure would love to be able to talk to their mother or father or sibling or brother one more time, and my family are all still here, and I need to make a better effort to talk to them and see them, especially the ones that are here in town. Auntie Rachel, I really got to get out to see Auntie Rachel more often. It's so wrong of me not to spend more time. She's right here. I don't know. Hug your kids, hug your parents, stay prayed up.